Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 7 short stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the podcast, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. If you enjoy true crime stories, make sure to check out our other podcast, Karma Crime, where we've just released our 8th episode. Karma Crime is available on all major podcasting platforms. Alright, on to today's stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from I Aim to Sneeze. That time my mom upended the dress code for my entire school. When I was little, my mom sent me to a private religious school. My family isn't religious, but they felt like I'd get a better education there. And when I switched to public school later, I found out they were right. I was pretty far ahead. This school had uniforms. Boys wore button-down shirts with the school logo and blue slacks. Girls wore jumpers. My mom hated cleaning and ironing these white button-down shirts every day. I was one of 4 kids. Kids play and get grass stains. The shirts were taking up a lot of her time. Finally, she gave up and bought a bunch of white polo shirts and started sending us to school in those. Admin had a conniption fit about it and brought her in for a meeting. They opened the dress code rulebook and pointed out that these shirts were missing the logo, so they were in violation. My mom looked over the rules and confirmed that the lack of logo was the only violation. They said yes. She thanked them and left, and the school probably thought it was over. Just to be petty, they sent a school-wide memo regarding the dress code. My mom took every polo shirt and stitched a homemade school logo onto them. It wasn't hard to do as the logo was just the school initials. Admin was furious, but during the next meeting, realized their hands were tied. The memo piqued the curiosity of other parents, and they started asking Mom where she got the new school shirts. Apparently, she wasn't the only one sick of ironing and getting grass stains out. Suddenly, I wasn't the only one wearing a polo shirt to school. The worst part for the school was that, despite tuition being pretty expensive, they also had a kickback deal going with a local clothing store for the uniforms. The store had a monopoly on the sale of those shirts. When business started lagging, the store made their own version of the polos for sale. Eventually, the original shirts were phased out entirely. That was over 30 years ago, and my mom still loves telling that story. OP added a bit of an aggressive edit down at the bottom. It says, "Edit, I'm cracking up at some of you calling my mom a Karen and clutching your pearls about the poor school losing revenue. You guys are acting like they had to put the school mascot down after they didn't make their nut on uniform kickbacks. I can assure you they were, and still are, making money hand over fist and doing just fine. You guys typically side with the HOA as well when you read those stories?" Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called The Right Ann. It says, "Your mom is a badass. I love this story." OP responded and said, "She takes no BS, laugh out loud. I'm lucky she's my mom." Another commenter down below called OK Reporter 4737 said, "My kid goes to a secular private school, and I'm pretty sure if we tried to pull something about the dress code, they'd say something along the lines of, 'Do it or leave. There's 100 other kids waiting for this spot that won't give us problems about the dress code.'" OP responded and said, "Yeah, I'm sure this would go down differently today than it did in the late 80s, like trying to haggle when buying a new car. My folks told me to tell them we were paying in cash and to knock a couple grand off the price. The salesman looked at my wife and I and said, 'I mean, cash or loan, our prices are fixed. Feel free to try down the road.' Got that same answer at 3 places and realized my dad maybe hadn't bought a car in a while." Yeah, the way that vehicles are priced has definitely changed over the years. I've seen some dealerships up here in Canada that have 2 different prices, one for cash and one for financing. And yeah, you're not going to get a discount on cash because they get a kickback on the financing, like the commenter said. Going back to OP's story and their little edit down at the bottom, I don't understand why they went off on people in the comments, because out of all those comments, there were maybe 2 that were disparaging OP's mom for not doing their job. And OP apparently saw those too and decided that was the final straw. This story comes to us from Viking Mwon. Extra work time. I work as a field researcher, so my job requires me to drive around to a lot of different locations. Because of this, I also get paid my hourly wage for travel time. This only includes everything to the job site, so job site to home or office to job site are paid, but office to home isn't paid. We frequently have to end our day at the office to drop off items and resupply. However, most of the time, me and my colleagues just write all driving time since our homes and offices are close by, and in practice, it actually saves time. So, I started this project 3 months ago. This project was in a city a 45-minute drive away from home, and a 1-hour drive from the office I usually use, and I am assigned to. This is on a very traffic-prone highway, by the way. However, in the same city I had an assignment, we also had an office, so I started using that office to drop off and resupply instead of my normal office. My manager noticed this, so asked me why I still wrote 1.5 hours drive time a day instead of 45 minutes, and pointed me to my contract where it is put as I explained before. I replied to him telling him I would drive to my usual office then so I could write the time anyway. He couldn't do anything against it and hung up. 2 weeks later, after I had 4 hours of unnecessary paid time written extra thanks to traffic jams and the extra drive time, he told me that from that point on, I could just write the time from the city office to home. I have an awesome manager. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Crittenden Wildcat. It says, if your manager is so awesome, he would have recognized the savings before you had to demonstrate the alternative for him. I'm gonna give the manager the benefit of the doubt in this case and say that they were busy and maybe they didn't realize what they were doing by telling OP to go to their original office. But one thing I do believe is that a good manager is a manager that learns from their mistakes. And it sounds like they did in this case and changed it back so that it would be better for OP and better for the company in the long run. So yeah, I think he was a great manager. This story comes to us from Smoky Moonman. Don't want to reimburse me? Okay. I work as a breakfast cook for the largest hotel chain in the world at a 4-star, single-lettered hotel in the largest French-speaking province in Canada. Each cook is given a stipend of $200 to buy personal equipment, peelers, rasps, knives, etc. I bought a 7-inch non-stick ceramic frying pan for myself. They have 7-inch Teflon pans here already, but due to people not taking care of them, they are mostly scratched. It is worth noting that our current chef was brought in to lower the cost of the kitchen, so our quality of food has gone down drastically. During the holiday break while I was off, they bought new egg pans, but they were 8 inches instead of our traditional 7. When I filed my receipt, I was told by HR that the pan I bought wouldn't be reimbursed. I paid $35 for it. They told me that the hotel is supposed to cover the cost of pans. So, too bad, so sad. Okay, fine then, I will use your larger pans for omelets. Now, our omelets are too big for the plates, and I have to use more inventory to make the omelets look like we aren't skimping on our product. Good thing you guys wouldn't pay me back for the pan that cost half the price of what you bought the new pans for at a larger size and cost. And now, I have a nice egg pan for at home. Whenever, whatever. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user who is going straight after my heart. Their name is Strange Marzipan 9641, and they say, I know it won't go over easy, but you should let HR know it all boils down to this. The new chef isn't all he's cracked up to be. I'll see myself out. So, OP, are you saying in this case that the hotel had to take an L rather than the W that they're used to? If you know, you know. The funny thing is, I know exactly where this hotel is located, what it's called, and I think I've actually been there before. But now I feel like I need to go back and order myself an omelet. Also, I just want to mention that if anybody is still using Teflon pans, they are incredibly bad for the environment and they are only meant for low or medium heat. If you use them on high heat, they off gas and they are horrible. This story comes to us from Your Grandpa's Left Toe. Okay. Math class drawings. I am 15 male. Ever since I started taking my medication, I had signs of hyperactivity which distract me in class. One of the things I do very often in my classes is draw, which no other teacher has a problem with, except my math teacher. I only draw once I have completed the due page or when my class is very slow. My teacher, who I will call Mrs. Old, had a serious problem with my doodles, often calling me out in front of the class for drawing or taking my pencil. This completely enraged me because I understood the subject completely fine. To comply with her request, I started writing random quotes, lyrics, and emoticons on my page instead. This has made her more pissed, unfortunately. She had then called me to her desk after her period, telling me that she only wanted the answers on my page. I, still feeling mad, had a plan to write only the answers in an extremely messy font. She had told me to write them normally, so I wrote them in my own language after. I had gotten a detention for those two, but I refused to let her take control of me, so whenever I had online work, I would move as slowly as possible in order to show her how slow everyone else was to me. After the backlash of repeated offenses, I had gotten a reflection for a few days. I still love myself for the creativity of what I did. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have a very awesome comment from a user called FoilK. It says, OP, I know where you're coming from. My background and degree is in math, and I've been a math teacher. In contrast to the rigor of math, good malicious compliance that not only gets back at those demanding compliance and works within their rules, but actually helps the situation as well, is a bit of an art form. A suggestion to that effect: finish the work quickly, trivial for you, and as the teacher wants. Then, here's the trick: ask the teacher for more. If she gives you more, finish it, then ask for more again. Finish that, then ask for more again, repeatedly. If she doesn't give you more, demand specific instructions about what you are to be doing next. If she says something dismissive, like just sit there or check your work, then comply maliciously to that. Sit and stare. Check it. Tell her it's checked, and then ask for what's next again. The idea is to make it uncomfortable. Force the teacher to deal with your level of ability by complying maliciously within her rule set. It will be annoying for you, but it will be excruciating for her. Shouldn't take too long before she has to adjust. Godspeed. I was thinking in this case more along the lines of OP talking to their parents and telling them you want them to request an IEP for them so that they can actually doodle after they've completed their classwork. If they're already done everything they need to do, then why does it matter if they want to do some drawings in class? As long as it's not interrupting anybody else, their work is already done, it's not affecting their learning, then I see no problem with this. But a teacher would have to comply with an IEP, so that's something to look into. This story comes to us from Easy Economics 8461. Enjoy your mail, jerk. I work for a large life insurance company, talking to customers on the phone. I got a call from a foul-mouthed, sharp-talking, abusive caller. I could see through the phone, the butthole in a suit behind his desk caller in my mind. He spoke beyond sharp. He was loud, forceful, and peppered his speech with the worst profanity. He demanded to know if he could split his life insurance benefits between two people, and if they had to be family. I told him he could, and they didn't. He then demanded to get the change of benefit forms sent to his office. I told him he could do this. He made me repeat back to him what we spoke about, and that I promised to send the change of benefit form to his office, not his home. He said his wife was busy and didn't need to be bothered with menial business. He actually said, repeat after me, I will, ... He made me do this twice. By the time he was done, I was practically in tears. I was shaking. I kind of had an idea why he wanted the form sent to his office, not his home. Anyone else guess? Well, I sent the change of benefit form to his office as requested. I did not, however, mention the automatic, I can't do anything about it, confirmation of beneficiary change letter that would be sent to his home address listing the amounts and names of the beneficiaries. I went back in weeks later and found the change made as requested, and changed back to wife only again. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Tasty Adhesiveness 66. It says, guess who got caught cheating? Another commenter down below called Illuminatus Prime said, I would be willing to bet the cheater is cursing your name, your birth date, and the horse you rode in on. Fair game, very well played, you have my upvote. OP responded to this one and said, I can only hope, as then it would be mutual, although unfair to my horse. Okay, so we honestly don't know what the policies were for OP when they were on the phone, but I've worked in 8 different call centers or so over my years. Yeah, I've had a lot of jobs. And in most of those call centers, if a customer was cursing at me or abusing me on the phone, I would be able to give them a warning, and if they continued, I would be able to say, okay, well, you weren't able to listen, so I'm now disconnecting the call. In fact, I'd say if the place you're working in doesn't have a policy like that in place, it's probably not a great place to work at, because nobody should have to take that kind of abuse from anyone. This story comes to us from Belisarius1262. Any units? This one actually got done to me yesterday. We had some material that I knew we were going to use more of than projected, so I told the person using it to cut the lengths you actually need and then measure the rest and let me know how much is left. Now, for various reasons, our system uses a wild mix of measurements. There is almost no way to know in advance whether something like this will be measured in inches, feet, meters, or millimeters. So, intending to save both of us some trouble, I told him, any units are fine, I can convert them easily. I realized what I'd said about 2 seconds later and tried to clarify any normal units. So he brought me the measurement in Roman cubits. And then, once we'd both had our laugh, gave me the sheet in millimeters that he'd converted from. Okay, if you're listening to this, you're probably a fan of all things Reddit. So that makes me wonder why they didn't use the SRBS, or the standard Reddit banana scale. Or they could have taken it even further. They could have gone furlongs per fortnight. Or they could have used one of my favorites. They could have measured it by smoot. This story comes to us from a deleted account. You cannot use your allotted meal budget to tip. I travel a lot for work, and my company agreement is that I get a set amount for food every day. I don't have a knack for fancy foods, so I typically just get what I get and I tip heavily to maximize the dollar amount. This was never a problem in the past until my company got acquired and the new company is aggressively cutting costs. Someone from HR emailed me to tell me I was financially on the hook for tips. I couldn't expense them anymore. So now I just buy the food I eat from the grocery store, eat cheaply, and spend the rest on donuts and coffee for all of my coworkers everywhere I travel. There is a set budget for food every day. If you're going to be a penny pinching POS, I will find ways to spend that money within our agreement to give to others. Next time, I think I'll feed the homeless. Need I remind my company that I'm doing them a favor by traveling because they don't want to pay full-timers in these areas? Don't be cheap. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Clone Clem. It says, is this a new item regarding expense accounts, or is your HR playing God here? I've traveled for business some 30 years and never had any tips challenged or any other expense for that matter. OP responded and said, probably, we used to have flat rates and didn't even require receipts. They'd just expense the flat amount per day to my checking account. I'm guessing they're new items because they require receipts now and they see the tip line. I'm probably too anti-establishment for my own good, but crap like this is why I have such an aversion to corporate culture. Like ordering enough food to match the allotted budget for myself and throwing away what I don't eat is fine, but tipping is where we draw the line. Another commenter down below called Slodden Salt Pepper 6 said, my boss told me once that traveling is a privilege after a disagreement over one of my expense reports. I didn't travel for 3 months and she was livid. I simply explained that if it was a privilege, then it certainly wasn't obligatory. Cue stammering and backpedaling. Now, it's mutually understood that it's a requirement for my role, but we're not going to argue over BS like the cost of meals that are only slightly off the daily guidance, and I'll pick my hotel. Traveling for work is draining, doubly so if you have a family. Companies that find people good at traveling roles who are also happy in them need to shut up and be grateful. So I think what OP needs to do is find the restaurants that have the gratuity as a line item on the receipt, not as a one where they have to write it in themselves. That way, they can argue that it was a part of the meal and it wasn't actually a tip that they were adding on. That way, they could get compensated for the whole thing. If you enjoyed daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and give us a 5-star rating on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.